We started talking about we're sitting on dates as a great section of agriculture in California, and they are so delicious, already caramelized by the sun. So much history in a date. It's not the prettiest little fruit if you just look at it by itself, but they're so delicious, and there's so many different kinds. Like, that's so interesting to me. When we started talking about the Amaro, I was like, why does nobody make date spirit? Like, if I'm going to go to all this effort to make a date sweetened Amaro, wouldn't I want to use a date spirit instead of grape or grain?
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today. Beautiful Southern California today. A nice winter's day. I'm about to have a conversation with Chef Elizabeth Falkner. Introductions in just a moment. Hey, since we're talking chefs and wine and aperitifs today, have a listen to an older episode with Jonathan Waxford, part of the change of cuisine in America, which started in Los Angeles in the 80s. He was an integral part of that, as well as Joaquin Lichau. He's also on the show, but go back and find those episodes. They're really fascinating, and they will tie right into today's conversation. Hey, give me a great review. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. And please subscribe. That's how it's egotistical-driven podcast should stay in business. Thank you for doing that. But not while we're here. We're here to have a conversation with Chef, though she calls herself a jack of all trades when it comes to hospitality and wine. And we're going to talk Amaro and aperitifs today as well. Welcome to the show, Chef Elizabeth Falkner.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
We may know you from some TV stuff. What?
I've been on a few TV shows over the years. I would say that the genre of cooking competition has been one of my favorite things, although I'm getting a little tired of it these days. It seems like it's Cirque du Soleil these days. You know what I mean? But I've been on lots of stuff from in the Food Network world, especially Next Iron Chef, and Tournament of Champions, and all the all-star versions of, all those different shows, Cutthroat Kitchen, and blah blah blah, and on Top Chef too.
Let's drill it back a little bit, just so for the listeners. There's an interesting thing. I mentioned my daughter was part of the bakery side of hospitality, now mother of three, but we went and looked at a bunch of schools, culinary schools, after she had returned from France and had studied pastry and bread. And it was kind of a bizarre, particularly the CIA in that, where the presentation was about, you may not want to go to college, just come to culinary school, and the premise was you're going to be a celebrity chef one day, which could be really probably further from the truth that thousands of people that go into culinary school come out as a...
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like there was a period of time of a proliferation of culinary schools, and it kind of coincided with a lot of chefs becoming much more popular in the meathead because of television and magazines and the sort of combination of the two.
Yeah.
But I, as somebody who employed a lot of people at a period of time, would always tell kids coming out of culinary school, well, you still have to, you got to start at the bottom and work your way up. So if you're really talented and really good and you've been to culinary school or not, you're gonna climb fast in this business.
It seemed like when she was done, I think I thought it sort of touring, we'll get to that later, but it seemed like when she was done with it, she learned how to chop and julienne and use sort of procedures, hang a pot on the wall, maybe some business side of being a chef, but there wasn't any. You couldn't possibly learn at a school like that in limited time, even remotely 5% or 2% of things you should understand when you walk into a kitchen.
Well, it's challenging because when you think what you learn in a couple of years in culinary school, there's so much to learn in food. I mean, you can sort of pick a side and then, 10 years later move to a completely different part of the kitchen if you want to, or a different part of the angle of the business. So I think it's actually really hard to teach people so much about food in 2 years. I mean, if you have no foundation or background, like your parents don't cook, then I think culinary school is great, because then you do learn some skills, a little bit about the business, and you may decide, hey, this is a tricky, scary, risky business. And I think our food world is changing so much. So I'm not down on culinary school. I just think.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to disparage it. I think it's got an important part. But the part that was sort of interesting was he's talking about possibly becoming a celebrity chef, sort of like the carrot.
Yeah.
Not to be a food pun or anything.
Well, and you have to think about too, like the 90s into the 2000s, like a lot of people opened restaurants in this country.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I mean, people still, restaurants are closing sometimes, but people are constantly opening more restaurants. And I think like there was a good period of time there when kind of even right before social media where a lot of kids were coming up and saying, oh, I just want to own my own restaurant someday. And I was already kind of in that. I never came into this business thinking I'm going to be a celebrity chef, because the only celebrity chefs that were around me were like Mary Sue and Susan, from Two Hot Tamales.
Yeah, right.
And really just really well-known, really good restaurant chefs. Like they were actually really good working in restaurants. They weren't just TV personalities. So the TV personality chef is a really different kind of chef too. And then I feel like I'm just seeing more and more of that. And then this idea that I do meet kids all the time who are like, oh, I just want to, I want to go on Chopped. I want to be a celebrity chef.
Right.
And you can do that on TikTok.
Why is that so
without
true?
even cooking,
It's a really interesting point, because there is two sort of parts of it, right? You are Pat Toretti from Mama's Own, sort of responsible for bringing the back house to the front, and Wolfgang Puck was the first guy supposedly, which is even true. I'll talk about that in a bit. But why is that so intriguing? I would, if my daughter came back to LA and she wanted to open a restaurant, I would do it with her, even though she was, you're still in it a little bit, just get the interview. Let's go. Like opera paying for it though. But why is that so intriguing to just the general population to be in the hospitality business, which is so hard? What do you think it is?
I think that I've met so many people, and I've been employed by people that have a fantasy of having a restaurant, and that it seems very glamorous. I mean, it's not really glamorous work. It's just not. I mean, there is a very rewarding side of it, which is just making people happy, which is truly hospitality, and maybe sometimes surprising them or entertaining, all those things that go into restaurants. But it's like physically really demanding work, and I don't know. It's kind of like before people wanted to be chefs or own a restaurant, they wanted to have their own little B&B.
Right. That's true.
A little inn and Nantucket somewhere, and
so cute.
make muffins and stuff.
Yeah, then to worry about ordering soap or toilet needle rings. But
What happened to the toilet clogs? I mean, things that happen in restaurant too.
yeah.
But there's something really cool about that work too. For me, having so much experience in it, that like I can do so many things. I can, problem solve is the name of the game. I mean, like, I'm on the board of James Beard Foundation now, and something that I'm reminded of often just with different people who work for the foundation, like, chefs just get stuff done, and that's just true.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
My daughter we were talking about the bear.
Okay.
We loved it. The beginning, as most series go, the beginning is a little more accurate, a little less dramatic, and you sort of get a feel for this goes on, thinking a little crazy, but you should, that was the kitchen. She worked for Lincoln in New York. She was on the line there. She wanted on the savory side, but
Cool.
Well, that's the energy. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And
So you kind of have to be like into hospitality, kind of a football player, kind of on Broadway.
you think hospitality's dead these days after COVID?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't think it's dead. I think it really stands out when you have great service and hospitality whether it's in a restaurant or hotel or. So I was listening to one of your podcasts and somebody said bedside manner.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
About, like I've noticed that even in hospitals too. I'm like, good, they could really learn from the hospitality industry.
Yeah, you're sure. In fact, in your show, in the movie, you talked about, it was about COVID and some of the things that happened.
Oh, sorry, we're closed.
Yeah, sorry, we're close.
Yeah.
Good another thing. Thank you. There has been a noticeable difference in hospitality post-COVID. I think, the general gist of the idea is that, wow, people realized when they got out of hospitality, were forced to stay home or do whatever we did during COVID, and realized, well, I'm not sure I want to go back into that fray. But I'm getting the sense from other chefs and people in the industry that, they starting to return now. The educated, the trained, because we are suffering, in my opinion, at least around the San Diego Valley, Los Angeles, probably most of culinary centers, that, untrained hospitality people we needed people to work.
Yeah.
They came without experience.
Yeah.
It was very obvious, even at the made to use table.
I mean, I think COVID really did, stopped our culture for a chunk of time, and everybody got used to more and more food ordering services like DoorDash,
Worse.
Uber, and all that stuff. And people are, like, I remember sort of on the opposite end of that, where the chefs were like, I remember I was picking up a kit for a fundraiser at Osteria Mozza, which is one of Nancy Silverton's restaurants, and standing in line, and Billy Harris texted me and said, "Faulkner, are you in line? Because we need so much help. Like, we don't know how to put our food in a box. Like, Nancy's got like 20 components to go into the Caesar salad.
Yeah, right.
And it's all in little tiny plastic containers, And so I've seen these chefs trying to figure out how to, make nice food in a plastic container to be delivered. And that sort of culture, like, I even have my brother and sister-in-law live in Brooklyn, and they constantly just order food delivery and stuff. And I think that's just kind of normal for a chunk of the culture right now. And I hope it just kind of I feel like it's just sort of the fashion of the time, and that what will happen is people will really long for and miss, like, just being able to go to a nice restaurant that isn't necessarily like super fine dining, multiple courses and stuff, but just like, having really good service, really good wines to go with the food. Everything is like fashion to me, so I feel like it's like, okay, well, we had an interruption for a good 4 or 5 years, and then affected the economy of the restaurant, and that at some point it kind of will shift into more creative versions of it.
I agree with that entirely. It's actually very parallel to the wine trade. 12,000-year-old product has gone through many sociological changes. It's going through so today with generations. It's kind of interesting. The millennials, and I have 3 of them, they are about experience. So that you look at a generation that still kind of wants to go to the restaurant, that wants to be treated, that wants to have the hospitality, and they're willing to spend the money and not stay, for the Mustang that I would have done in my generation, because they wanted the experience of the sushi bar or the custom wine. But wine is the same way. It's going through the valley now, and it'll come back as a renaissance, because I think as the history of cuisine goes, it has its peaks and valleys, and the types of food, and the renaissance of the 80s will return in a different fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope that I'm somebody who loves more European wines. I do like, I think that people do make great wines in California and other parts of this country too, but I'm always been curious, like, why people don't grow other varietals up and down California, and especially into like Mexico too, like really Southern California. Like, I love the terroir, and I think it is asking for other kinds of grapes. And so I hope that the trend, personally, it's very selfish personally, I hope that we get much more into other varietals from other parts of that grow really well in the Mediterranean that might do better in this climate. And I'm not a winemaker, so I don't know.
Well, you have an interesting point in this work point, because it's really interesting that when chefs sit there, or when winemakers sit there, or the marketing guy from the winery, different take on the subject, and that is, I kind of respect the European model, and I sort of am envious of the fact they protect their regions of not only wine, but butter, cheese.
Yeah.
That there's certain rules. And for them, that feels like a handcuffing of their talent and their creativity. Us on the west side sort of look like a lot, but you have structure to it all. You can't just play that. And that is one of the benefits to French wineries, for instance, to come to California, is I grow whatever I want. Mm-hmm. And I can try whatever I want, and I can experiment with whatever I want. And if I want to go to Mexico and the Valley of Guadalupe, I can do it. Or to Oregon and make Pinot Noir, I can do it. And I don't have to worry about answering anybody.
Right.
And so this is balance that goes through this.
Yeah.
I think the grass is always greener.
I do like these wine varieties too.
Yes. Oh, Greek wines. Incredible right now.
Yeah.
But that's the deal. We'll talk about the marketing of this stuff. We've got a few more minutes to talk about food, but I want to talk about the Amaro and distillate there. But this changes happen. And for instance, right now, there's this whole movement for innovation. I'm like, well, that could be innovation, what you just said. In the wine world, it could be, I brought a varietal from the Canary Islands to California and propagated it and made amazing inroads. But what you fight is the marketing of all the mainstream stuff. Like you're not going to see that on the shelf of Ralph's.
Right. Not for a while.
Yeah, for probably ever. Because there's no way Treasury or Constellation is going to give up, Snoop Dogg's Cali Red
Right.
for something else. But I think, maybe this goes to the food side too. Eventually, every generation comes to the table that sees the food analogy and says, wow, I get it now. I'm done with DoorDash and done with, processed foods, and maybe we'll talk about the RFK's movement here. I'm done with all the societal things that come with food. And let's stick to the grassroots of what a proper meal is.
I mean, I hope so, and I think I feel like I've been talking about this recently, but our country is so young in the big scheme of things. I mean, we're talking about wine. It's been around forever, and all these kind of like Heather and I got into our business with the spirit, and we call it Tomorrow. Tomorrow is a play on words, meaning it's T''Maro, yes. But it's made today for tomorrow's world, because we're looking at climate change and the resilience of the date palm. So the root word is tamar, which means date and date palm in ancient languages, in Hebrew and Arabic specifically. And that wanting to do something with dates are we're the second biggest grower in the world in this region of dates. Everybody thinks of dates as being from the Middle East, and they are originally from there in North Africa. But we grow some of the best dates in the world in Coachella Valley, in Palm Desert here. And Heather's from San Diego. I grew up in LA, and we were sort of asking this question when we were in Sicily. We were talking about Amari and the world of Amaro and Digestivo and the bitters and the sort of how exciting it is in cocktail culture today for bartenders to be using Amaro in cocktails. I think we're seeing it more and more. People are embracing that. The Americans are embracing that bitter side of that world. And that's all really interesting and fascinating. I love the history of it. I love that humans have been making sort of these, I can imagine like monks and nuns and witches and witchcraft and mysterious churchy vibes happening in all these cauldrons, and making these
we just saw
wild, like, what's that?
We just saw Wicked the other night.
Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but making all these concoctions that really used to be like medicine for people. So like, this will just make you feel better. And of course it was spirit-based or wine-based, then adding some sweetener to it, which I would imagine the date stuff has been around for a long time, but we haven't actually seen it being used today because sugarcane became so popular to refine product and cheaper. And obviously honey. And when we look back we studied the heck out of it, and we were like, why is nobody using dates in anything? And then, so we started with an Amaro, and we wanted to only sweeten with dates because it's a softer, rounder sweetener that's already caramelized. So we don't have to add caramel color. We don't have to use any, there's nothing artificial in our Amaro. And it's not super sweet because like what happens, or what's happened in maybe 200 years ago, is that the bitterness is there from all the herbs and the barks and stuff, and that's the medicinal side of it, And then to counter that, a lot of sugar. But for a digestivo for today's palate, especially for Americans who eat way too much sugar, that doesn't make any sense to me. I would never want an Amaro, really. I mean, I like a lot of the flavors of some, like I love Averna, and I love Chinar. Artichoke.
I'm a Chinar person.
A lot of citrus in the Averna. But they're very sweet. And so, again, I like them as mixers in cocktails, but to drink them by themselves, that's why we came to this conclusion that we were going to make a delicious Amaro only sweet with dates.
I mean, off the record, I think my wife thinks Chinar's an hallucinogen. First few times my buddy and I had a few shots or had made soda, we went a little sideways. But I wonder.
But I think it's the combination of the alcohol and the sugar in there too.
So I would ask this question because you said something about the bitterness, and Cosmopolitan, they're not Cosmopolitan. The Romans have a bitterness too because there's sweet vermouth and there's bitter. And Campari. I wonder if bitterness isn't like terroir in a wine or wines that express, dry wines that express their terroir. In other words, is that a sophistication of the palate there? If you drink store-bought wines like the Patek brand and Jocelyn's, you have a certain palate, and it's gonna refine from there. You're gonna get more interested in wines that are complex, and eventually you land on an ultimately dry red wine. It could be from any part of the world, but it expresses where it's from. And why of bitterness in the food, in the world of food, and in digestives, is sort of that sophistication of the palate, away from the sweetness into the complexity.
Yeah, not just sour.
Yeah,
Truly like a, I kind of, what happens in my head when I think about flavors is, and almost like architecture or shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the bitterness is, it's like a screw, like it's a pinpoint, and it kind of just drills into your
Yeah,
palate a
right.
little
Good
bit.
point. I like that surgery.
It's in the same way I think of sugar as being almost like a flat, aggressive,
Yes.
like a wrapping of your face.
There's no complexity to it. It's
Just kind of comes in and attacks as a kind of sweetness. I've worked with a lot of alternative sweeteners in candy making for a company, so I do taste all these things all the time. And yeah, bitterness is an interesting one because I think we like it more and more. I like puntarella. You know, it's the time of year for chicories.
yeah, right. Yeah.
And those bitter greens and like dandelion greens, they're bitter. I mean,
They are.
not everybody has the palate for it until somebody gives you like Gabrielle Hamilton, my friend at Peru,
Right.
chef at Peru. She, I remember one time going there, this is many years ago, and having a dandelion salad with like lardon, croutons, and maybe some hard-boiled egg and probably a sherry vinaigrette. This is just my memory.
Yeah.
It might be in her book, in her cookbook. But then I was like, gosh, I hadn't really experienced somebody serving dandelion greens outside of Europe, and so I just loved it. It was just a perfectly balanced. It had just enough fat on it from the pork, and just the right kind of acidity too. So it probably had, I've lived in New York, and I think we use more vinegars than citrus, like we did in California.
Well, I think, because it's close to Europe. It's just like the wine trade. You get much more with imports in New York you do in LA. And I think certainly cuisine will want to do it.
Yeah, and also just citrus doesn't grow there. You're
right.
probably going to get it from California or maybe
Sumach.
Florida. And Florida's citrus is so watered down because of the rainfall, so it's a really different kind of concentration.
My dad was we said this about the dates. When he passed away a couple of years ago, but my sister sought out and he was loyal to find the dates, I think, or the style of the species that he used to eat in Cairo. He's from Cairo.
Oh, yeah.
Originally. He moved when he was 21, so he was, well encultured in the Arabic lifestyle of dates and food with indigenous foods. But he was a pharmacologist, and so his specialty when he got to America was plant-based medicines. And so he tasted ate all these things. And I'm always complaining, come back from work, and it smelled high-headed with all kinds of different things he would taste to make some of his medicines. And I thought that's why he was so good at this, at being able to parse out what he tasted and what, much like you see space, the shapes, and influences of food flavors in your head, you can sort out, pick out
Yeah.
those flavors because of all this experience. You apply this.
Isn't that wild? And you reminded me that, that Mary Poppins song, A Spoonful of Sugar.
Yeah, right.
Medicine Go Down. I think that's really good, sort of the root of Amaro. And
So funny.
honestly, I think that soda, clearly we use bitters and Amari in spritzes, which is really the beginning of soda pop, because when you look back at like even the formulas for Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper and whatnot, they have other, I'm not really sure how real anything is anymore because there's flavor extracts now, but they're based in this world of Amaro.
It's funny you said that because somebody posted on Facebook, of course, it's got to be real. But they were going through the formulas or the ingredients of the foods I ate when I was a kid and what they have in today. One of them was, for instance, Gatorade. And it said Gatorade. I remember my cross-country coach from high school trying to duplicate Gatorade when it came out, which is you took water, flavored punch like Kool-Aid or something if there's sugar in it, right? And according to this post, Gatorade was water, lime juice, and salt. Right? The
salt in there.
And now it's all this other stuff. And I think we've talked about it a little bit, but you say something about the bitterness of foods versus the West Coast and East Coast. I find that really fast. For instance, we use a lot of sumac in our meat culture.
Oh yeah.
And that, is a substitute for citrus.
Yeah.
Great
substitute.
Right.
Kind of like hibiscus is.
Yeah, right. In hibiscus type thing. Then I was reading the recipe book this morning, actually, of La Bouvette and Juan Paris. And she was talking about having dried mandarin, the mandarin tangerine rind lying around the house. She was using to decorate foods, a place would never have considered using them as ingredient. And then decided one day to grind them up and sprinkle them on burrata. A little honey became this sweet, bitter thing.
Yeah.
That sounds so good. It's so simple.
Yeah. Sounds very Sicilian, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yes. It would be. What would interest you at all to get into the spirit of business and to here? I mean, you already know the headwinds. You've done business with Southern Wines and Spirits and Young's Market and all the rest of the brands that are out there. You sorted through wine lists. You probably stocked the bar at the restaurants. You probably decided on what mixology was going to be like. And you still decided you want to do this.
Yeah, but you have to remember that I'm a chef first, and yes, I've owned restaurants and with bars, and I'm somebody who's like never really put myself in one box in culinary. So like, sometimes people refer to me as a really well-known pastry chef, and when I first started cooking, I worked in this little bistro called Café Claude, and I wasn't just a pastry chef. I did make all the desserts, but then I ran the restaurant for a year before I went into work in fine dining at Maz's and then on to Rubicon. But and I did become I was really good at pastry. I'm really organized. I'm really into the science of it all, and I think that excelling at pastry only makes you a better savory chef, and which is why the brigade system makes sense. You start in pastry when you work in a French kitchen, and you work your way into the other stations. But I just immediately got the attention I grew up in this very artistic family, and I have a film background, and so I just immediately started changing the names of all the desserts I was making. They were inspired by films and music and punk and new wave and all the stuff I grew up in with here in LA. And then, and then I opened Citizen Cake, and we started making breads and pizzas and then and salads and all that stuff. And then I morphed it into a full-on restaurant and bar. So like I've always had this influence into whatever part of the kitchen we're working on, with the idea that, obviously when I had a place called Citizen Cake, we made a lot of cakes, but we had great plated desserts. And so the idea was like, you'd come in there any time of day, and then you would have a cocktail, and everything was balanced. You wouldn't feel like, oh my God, I really went crazy on this side of the menu. It was like, it all made sense together. And then when I opened up Worsen, we had a huge bar in San Francisco, and it was just a tumultuous time because it was the stock market crash same year we opened. We held on to it for a few more years. And then I won a pizza competition in Naples, Italy in 2012, so I moved to New York and opened a pizzeria, and then I opened another Italian restaurant.
Winning a pizza contest with Naples, Italy, I mean, that's got some serious upset for you Italians.
But I come in as a chef, not as a. I'm not in the pizzioli. I'm not really like somebody who's just. I'm not a young kid working on my pizza. I mean, I've been making pizzas and bread for a long time, but I go into it very more chefy like, because I'm making a pizza that had panna, which is thickened cream as the base instead of tomato, fennel sausage, caciocavallo, pecorino, braised fennel with onion, and the fennel fronds, and then hit it with fennel pollen. So that's very chefy.
Everybody does this.
Yeah. Meanwhile, people are just like still mixing up with bell peppers and olives and trying to figure out the right color.
It's all by that.
Anyway, but that's how that happened, and then. So my point is, like, I've so for pizza, then I opened up a couple of Italian restaurants in New York, And I've done a lot of consulting my whole career in food and beverage in every level, like from brands that you know to working with Compass Group and talking to their teams and inspiring people. And I'm somebody who's run marathons and a lot of half marathons and played soccer till I was 40. I'm really into, paying attention to what you're eating. I'm very proud of my California upbringing because it's helped me be more healthy. Even as somebody who was a pastry chef, people used to say, "Oh, you never trust a skinny chef, especially a pastry chef." And I was like, "Well, someday you will." and I like all the fun part about food and beverage and alcohol beverage and everything. And I feel like there's time and place for all of it. And when I met Heather, my partner, who's has made a career in alcohol beverage, that's why we started having this conversation about, gosh, there's so much stuff on this shelf. If we're going to put so much effort into all the ingredients in the kitchen and in the juices that go into the bar, why are we not looking at the back of the bottle, and why are we not understanding what's in that? And so that's why we, started talking about we're sitting on dates as a great, section of agriculture in California, and they are so delicious, already caramelized by the sun. So much history in a date. It's not the prettiest little fruit if you just look at it by itself. But they're so delicious, and there's so many different kinds. Like, that's so interesting to me. And then while we're making this Amaro, I'm just into all the stuff, and I'm somebody who loves a good challenge. So if I have made a distillate once out of pears, but when we started talking about the Amaro, I was like, why does nobody make date spirit? Like, if I'm going to go to all this effort to make a date sweetened Amaro, wouldn't I want to use a date spirit instead of grape or grain?
It's got a lot of sugar in it already. So.
Yeah, so I made a wash, fermented it, and had it distilled, and we were like, this is actually really good. So we came up with two products at the same time, kind of by accident, because I was just like, why does nobody make a date spirit? We're like sitting on something here. This is so cool. And it's really smooth, and it's so fun to blind taste bartenders and chefs on it, because it's usually most people think it's a smooth tequila, and some people think it's a grappa.
So I would get into that in a second. Really dig down for what you built here, but for the listeners, because that question we get a lot, you probably do too. What's tequila, which is distilled agave plants, and what's in the bourbon, distilled mash, and what's in. Yeah. So you go through the list of distillates, and you pick out the things that happens to make it. It has a huge influence on what that character is. And you're talking about the smoothness of this distillate because it's from the dates. And I used to have a regular, he actually was a drywall contractor, and he loved distilling stuff. And so he would come by and pick up all the leftover wine. So I'd taste the bottles. And the stuff was horrible because it was made from oxidized, tired, wines that couldn't even sell as wine.
Yeah.
And then even when you distill it 2 or 3 times, it was still. So that's the part that's interesting to me. It carries that little bit of nuance, even though it's been boiled away and then re-evaporated and then boiled away again. You can't get rid of the influence of the source of the distillate.
Well, that's right. It's like how you make obviously, when you talk about some of the finest grappa in the world, or tequila, or red rum, anything, it's all in that whole fermenting period of time that's critical to what you're going to make as a distillate.
So it's interesting because you think, we have terroir-driven wines, and you were talking about growing different varietals, different parts of the world, and even when it comes to tequila, bourbon, the source of and the quality of that product that came out of the ground is still crucial piece of this form.
Yeah, and what's cool about it's so interesting to go into this. I do like making the message in a bottle rather than a croissant that I have to sell that day. Even though I really like croissants too.
I love that analogy.
I've been in that business, but this is, it's kind of scarier in a way because you've got, making some Amaro. I made it myself with the guy on the floor at the distillery, and to see the immense amount of dehydrated citrus and all the other botanicals that we brought in, and then just have to load them in hope it works out.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know, right?
It's a little like, because if you're making croissants, you can be like, okay, we need to change that tomorrow for the next batch.
That's true, right? And you
Yeah.
can fix that.
So you do a lot of tests, right? Obviously, a lot of bench work at the beginning, and then you got to go send off all your labels and formulas to get approval and all that stuff. So it's
So let's get into that business side. A lot of this is business. Once you have the ingredient, much like a restaurant,
Yeah.
you've got it open and you've got to make your adjustments and all of the things that hit you in the face that you had no idea would expect. Certainly alcohol has the layer of bureaucracy that does that as well, more than one. So you made this product, and this is really fun and exciting. What part of getting on the street did you not expect, or had you had enough experience on the back half of sort of idea?
Yeah, it's, of course, there's hurdles in the way and along the way. And I know when we were working with our incubator distiller, we were going back and forth about, like, we're using 100% organic dates from Coachella Valley. Can't put organic on the front of the label because distillery's not certified organic. And so there's so many, and I do know that, but to kind of like come up against that often when you're going to all this effort to use organic
Well, in
ingredients.
wine, they would have said made with organic grapes. Do you say that on the distillate?
Can say it on the backside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
Excuse me if I don't interrupt you, but for the listeners to understand that, then I have to say this again. You buy a wine or anything like this, and it says made from organic grapes or dates or whatever you're making it from, it does not mean that it itself is organic, because the processor may not be.
yeah, and it's not even our processing. It's just the distillery itself.
distillery
is certified organic, It's real and then I think that probably, nothing really phases me because I have been in restaurants.
Your packs against the wall all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, like, one of the funniest things that happened along the way was that I went to the ABC, which is the Alcohol Beverage Control office in Van Nuys, and to get our license, we have to have a kind of license to be a manufacturing agent for working with a distillery. So we're not the distillers yet. I would like to go to distilling school, but we, it's our formula. We work with them it's our product, whatever. But to go to the ABC office and have to sit down with them and open up the binder and try to help them understand which kind of license that we're applying for. That was like, I didn't expect that. And they're really nice. They're all like, on first basis with
that's
us.
the switch. They're really nice. The other one's right here. It was literally, you could throw a line, throw a rock at the ABC office here. Not really.
Yeah.
They're not typically nice.
Well, they're used to people getting restaurant
Yeah,
messages. And then they're like, they know me because they've seen me on Food Network.
Oh, that's the.
So they're like, chef.
Yeah,
and then,
that's
so
all.
they're trying to figure out what kind of license, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah, that's the question. That's really what I was trying to get to. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But there's a huge chasm between having a brand. I think I made 30 different brands here at Wine and Love Club, and building that brand.
Right.
It's a hand sell, and I would have guessed that
100%.
Olivia from Dates and Amaro from Dates, you need to be standing there pouring this for the bartenders, the restaurateurs, and say, this is the benefit of this.
Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve, and we are very small startup here, like bootstrapping it. It's a lot of our own money and time. We have like a couple of investors. Interestingly enough, it's like we do know we have made something really special here, and I have built a brand out of nothing. That was Citizen Cake was a big name for a long time, and I haven't been as excited about a project since then until now, because I think this is just, it's also this resilient plant, the palm tree that grows in the desert, which is going to be some of the harshest climate in the world. And this thing, it takes 6 years for it to bear fruit, but once it's going, it's quite amazing. I think
let's go back to that. There's lots of it. Takes 7 years for agave plant to be ready to be harvested for tequila.
And
dates.
But you also have to harvest the full agave.
Yeah, right.
The whole pinion.
Yeah.
And not so with a date tree.
Yeah. So it takes, like a vine, you wouldn't, maybe you'll make wine the fourth year of the the fruit. And you're saying it takes 6 years?
for it to bear the fruit that you need for.
Wow.
But then it keeps bearing fruit for a long time, and so the plant is quite sustainable. And this is also what's really cool and different and unique about our besides what's inside the bottle. We care very much about the environment, and we made a cork that's 100% cork. It doesn't have any plastic in it. It's not a two-part thing. And then the labels are made from upcycled palm fronds that we're going to landfill. So Heather has been very aggressive about this, and she contacted the state's largest arborist that collects they go around to all the different cities, and they clean up all the palm trees and all the trees around.
Right.
And they have a couple of spots in the state where they bring everything, and stuff gets turned into mulch, and it goes off to all different kinds of company. They sorts it and everything, but the palm they don't know what to do with it. And I'm like, we know what to do with it. We're going to turn it into paper. So we got some of the palm.
You guys I'm like, what? No.
And we got it. We took it to a San Diego paper maker and had it made for our labels. Yeah. So that's another really cool thing that we're working on, is just making more packaging for our product and others with palm.
So the formulation of this, how did that process go? Much like creating a recipe for a pastry that you said.
Yeah, like I said, I've done a ton of consulting in food and beverage, industrial wise. So like I am used to writing formulas for fine tuning and expanding in different product lines. And I've done it with beverage too, for not so much alcohol beverage, but in other beverage. And then for just different brands. And so for me like I said, I'm the head of R&D for this candy company called Behave, and we make not CBD or THC gummy bears, but just very low sugar gummy bears that actually taste good. It's that the owner is the founder is a millennial, like her kids, and she loves candy, and she came to me saying, I hear that you're really good at formula making, and I really would like to make a candy company that doesn't have sugar. And I'm like, okay, maybe just a tiny bit of sugar, but just to make everything else work, particularly in something like gummy bears. But like, that's a lot. For your listeners, you have no idea how hard it is to make gummy bear formula without sugar and make it really tasty and make the flavors really good. So that world is exciting and challenging for me. Like, I like challenges. And so this I love making cocktails, so I do taste all the stuff out there, and I can tell you what I like about some things, what I don't like about some things, and how to make. I get the idea of a balanced cocktail very much. I'm a huge fan of lots of the great bars around the country and cocktail makers that I know. And I was just talking to Dave Arnold a couple weeks ago on his podcast.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I basically came up with about, I don't know, a dozen different concoctions of different things that I would like to express in Amaro. And I look at it more like a fragrance maker. So I'm like, here's a flavor profile part of the world I'd like to go to, but with a nod to the past and respect, all respect to the people that have made Amaro in the past and who still make really good ones. And then just kind of had people taste them along the way and took notes and surveyed a lot of people and then just kind of came up. This is where we are at with this formula.
Is there a traditionalism to Amaro? Because Amaro is relatively new to the U.S. market as far as enthusiasm to it.
Yeah,
It's been around for a long time. It was forever beverage. Because the West Coast takes a little longer than the rest of us to get going. But let's say gin. Juniper-berry-based gin is the classic London dry gin. That's the way they were made for hundreds of years. Now there's all these botanicals and it's pretty stuff, which I don't like. I like more in the gin, but juniper-berry character. But is there sort of a profile for Amaro that you sort of work out of or into based on you started with dates, something no one's done before, that'll carry characteristics that maybe regular sort of mainstream Amaro doesn't have, but you work from that sort of functional character and work outward?
I think the equation is more spread out than sort of saying, here's the recipe I'm going to use. Because Heather's really good at collecting data on what's selling out there. So we know that, in the category, the ones that you think, oh my God, really the most popular ones out there? I mean, the most popular ones are like Jägermeister and Fernet world, right? Really extreme, really polarizing.
Sounds just like the wine.
Shot occasions,
right?
And then you've got Nomino, a beautiful expression
Right.
of Amaro, very sweet to me, and Montenegro, very sweet to me. I like the flavors in there, and there definitely is sort of a historical profile, I would say. But they all are made from, depending on where they came from in the region, in the world, they have different bittering agents. So you might find something has rhubarb, but I mean, there's some are smoked, some have the Ginkonen bark, some of them have like artichokes. So all the Indoline, like all these things.
Hallucinogenics.
Not so much the wormwood world, but some of the different bittering agents are, I guess, some are way more bitter than others, and then they counter it with all that sweetness. So I really came at this from recognizing some of the flavor profile out there in all these different herbs and botanicals used, but then also saying, wait a minute, we're talking about, like a winemaker, we're talking about the date fruit, and the date itself has so much flavor, and it has its own tannins, and it's not bitter, but it's got definitely not the backbone, the tannin, and acidity. So how can I take you on a trip around California, basically, with this nod to the sort of churchy past? I call it churchy because I think that Amari definitely has like sort of these mystical notes of like
that's interesting.
Resin, and I know that's the best way for me to describe it. It's just sort of like going to church notes. So and without giving away every single thing that's in the Amaro,
Percentages in it.
I did want to take people around this sort of from the desert to the coast to the Sierras, which is what you kind of smell when you're driving around California. You might let the artichokes come from Watsonville, next to the coast in Northern California. A lot of dried citrus from the Central Valley, from a great organic farmer, McFarland Farms. They come to the LA farmers markets quite a bit. And then we have like all of those fennel notes, because when you drive, especially on your way up north, and you see all the wild fennel going on the California highways. I love that fragrance so much. I used to live in San Francisco, and sometimes there you walk outside and you can just smell it out there.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. My son-in-law loves brown liquor, one of them. And he brings me all this stuff, and most of it I can't drink. And then he brought me this gin, I won't say the name, that's made from all these indigenous California things. And by the way, my father's credited in scientific journals for finding a plant in California that's distilled away, became an antidote during nerve gas. It's a natural antidote to during nerve gas. But beside the point, this gin is made from all the things that comes from California and all stuff, and it's terrible. I can't drink it. Yeah, so there's not a formula for success. It's just like, I put on the label, it's really cool, I did this, but it leaves you this question, which is really important in our industry. You brought it up with Heather. Other thing was selling.
Yeah.
And I have this very romantic view of wine. Like, I wish profit wasn't part of our formula. We'd have a completely different landscape of what wine is. But profit drives it, and what drives it is what's selling. It's a consumer-driven business. You want to sell what's selling. Is there a difference between what you would make without any handcuffs, without any, just like, I want to express this, versus, well, we've got to do this because that's what's going to sell?
Well, I mean, to be clear, like we made something that I think is not like any of those products I just talked about.
Yeah.
I think that I've been all over Italy. Italy's climate is very much like a lot of, obviously we have a lot of microclimates in California, but it's same over there. Yeah. And having been to Sicily for 3 times in the last 4 years, which is kind of, it's a miracle because I used to always be like, I just want to go to Sicily someday, like 5 years ago. And then all of a sudden I've like been there many times. And it's because I've done these chef-led tours and stuff like that. And, but so there are so many parallels in different parts of Italy. So when I talk about making something that's a California expression, I mean that because I'm using dates instead of grapes. And I'm wanted to use some of the agriculture from here, which is very much like the agriculture in Italy. And so it's not out of like, I'm going to do something so different. I really respect the past. It's just that I'm sitting on my terroir and I need to use what's here.
Right.
And without it being, that's not the whole story. It's the dates. The dates are like, they are such a resilient plan. And this whole thing came about because, we were talking about Amaro and we're also talking about climate change. And I feel like, oh my gosh, I have all the plants out there that don't require so much water.
Yeah.
It's kind of an amazing thing. And to go back to, it's sort of relatable to tequila because while the pinas, I've been to down in Mexico to Patron with the James Beard Foundation for learning how to make tequila there with them, and I love tequila. I think it's kind of mind blowing how many are out there, which is why we didn't want to make another tequila. That we don't need to. There's plenty of tequilas out there, and I'm like, it's just one of those things where it's like, this is the writing on the wall. Like, we need to make something with date. We live right here. They're right here. And so
That's great.
yeah, and so then the distillate is so exciting too because nobody's been making that. I'm positive somebody must be making some moonshine version of it out there, but it's just not been made.
Yeah.
And I also think it's because we all associate dates from the Middle East, and because it's so Muslim in the Middle East, that there's not been that history in over a long time now of people making it. They probably did in the past.
Except for bacon wrap days, like 1980s.
Yeah.
So appetizer.
But we all like grew up going and having date shakes on the way to the desert,
Yeah.
So I think for me it's a combination of wanting to respect the fruit, respect where I live and the history here, but also elevate the dates and take us into another fashion of what we can do with.
Indiana Jones, when the monkey eats the date, dies. And one guy listening to these bad dates.
I have a really cinematic version of what I'd like to see as far as an advertising campaign, and that would be, and I've been saying this from the get-go, I see a very sexy, badass, whatever, female character that's like kind of James Bond, but the female version, like kind of like Wonder Woman, right? So like she's like going through explosions and ski slopes and gun shooting and blah blah blah. And the world is crazy and chaotic that we live in, and she just, let's call it. She comes up to the bar, sits down, and the bartender just hands her a cocktail, and somebody, I don't care who they are, what kind of gender they are, they say, "What are you drinking?" And she says, "I'll tell you tomorrow."
Wow, you would think about that one for a while. I like that.
And then she's like basically, duh, it's tomorrow. I'm drinking tomorrow.
That's clever. Really clever. We need that kind of...
It sounds very exhilarating and very appropriate.
Yeah, I like
for a commercial, right?
we're out of time, but I do want tastings while we're here.
Yeah.
So...
And then, we made this little cacao nib one on the side, too. The half bottle here. So because I made the spirit, I was like, what else can I do with this? And I got these single origin cacao nibs from my friends at Dandelion Chocolate in San Francisco. They focus on single origin chocolate bars. And I made basically a very clean chocolate liqueur with the Coachella Valley dates and Camino Verde Estate Ecuador nibs.
So, I know what direction to start with wine, but with tasting spirits in Amaro, we should start with eau de vie.
Yeah, we're going to start with
Distillate of
the clear
primary distillate.
80 proof.
That's plenty of things.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a sweet.
I'll have a tiny taste because I know what it tastes like. But
No, you have his O's is very soft. You know, the listeners have got this clear, beautiful swirling. I'm swirling a liquor basically made from dates, but you already sense in the nose there's this balance and softness to it, which produces this 80 proof set.
Yeah.
So it's 40% alcohol.
yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
I personally, when I taste this or smell it, I get a lot of pear notes, and so I think I'm about to try like a pear eau de vie. I get a little bit of vanilla.
I'm getting the depth of that and the what do you call it, the fruit? I'm getting that nuance for sure.
And it is a little tequila-like in its nose, too.
It's got body too. That's really interesting.
That's pretty fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can serve meat like this, and you've heard what happened.
It's also a really good, like, we embrace the name eau de vie because you think of a palm tree out in the desert as an oasis kind of thing. And so we wanted to bring back the water of life. But it's also a really good, you have to think about this too. Dates work really well with other sweeteners, or in this case, this spirit works really well with other spirits. So, like one of my, a lot of people are carrying this already in different bars and restaurants. Our friend Kim Alder up in San Francisco at Nightbird, they have a cocktail at the bar there that is a vodka, our eau de vie, dry vermouth, lemon juice, and fig leaf oil. It's called Date Night. Of course, now everybody can come up with all these great puns on dates, you know. And it also works really well with tequila. So I think our favorite margarita right now is an ounce of Blanco tequila, an ounce of our eau de vie, an ounce of our Amaro as the sweetener, and then like 2 ounces of lime juice. Wow. And that is so interesting because the Amaro does have a lot of citrus, like I mentioned, so it has those notes, but then it has other, and
As mixology continued to grow, his name was really hot now, so a little bit flat, but is the idea of a mixologist, it sounds like clearly with this brand, that's an important part of the business, is going to be these creative bartenders and restaurants that have a cocktail list that's created by this.
Yeah, I think that it's not sort of died down. I think it's kind of growing again, and it's more widespread. People are being very selective in curating what's behind the bar now, and then they are being coming up with seasonal cocktails. So they'll change that menu much like a chef would, saying like, okay, this is what I'm going to put on my list for the next season, and that's an exciting time in the bar.
A lot of waiting is great. Not drinking the listeners drinking the Amaro. And the listeners know the show's about no swirling, no sniffing, but because this is so interesting, they had to do it. And you're right, it's not cloying sweet, it's just balanced sweet.
Yeah, it's really different than sugar. Remember I was talking about how
Yeah.
I'm not anti-sugar, by the way, but the way sugar, they're just different. It's so interesting as a chef person who likes to play with ingredients. The date sweetener is so different than the way sugar hits you. It's not an aggressive wrap
No.
like in the front of your head. It's much softer. It comes in a much rounder, softer, smoother way. And this is why it's so good in cocktails. It's great to drink by itself, neat, or on the rocks, but it's really good in cocktails because it helps round everything. So it plays really well with other sweeteners.
Really, I can see I've also decided I was going to take on some of the classic cocktails and perfect them for my own service at home. So the martini, and the brewing, the hat in particular, fashion. This would be like half of this instead of half sweet vermouth. Like take the sweet vermouth component, put it 2-to-1, but you put half of this instead of the sweet vermouth. It would give a different dimension to it.
Yeah, all this
Manhattan.
Black Manhattan. I made up a cocktail recently that has I think I can remember the portions. It's like an ounce of I got this really delicious spiced rum from Haiti called Boukman. I think I got it at Flask and Field. Really cool
Yeah.
shop. An ounce of that, an ounce of our Amaro, half an ounce of St. Elizabeth allspice dram. So that's a really interesting combination of spices that isn't, you might think I might be going to gingerbread land, but it's not. It's so balanced. And then I put in like a bar spoon of sour cherry juice, which I'm a huge fan of that sour cherry
I
juice
love
concentrate
sour
stuff,
juice.
right? And then like a half an ounce of yuzu juice. Oh my God. What a delicious cocktail. Like the spice, but it's a sour.
Yeah, right.
Without the egg white and all that. I mean, that would be nice too, but that I'm too lazy when it comes to making like a sour with the egg white. Anyway, just fun stuff. Like, I feel like there's so much to do with all of it. The cacao nib is also, like, we have it in a little kit right now that's available on Reserve Bar, so it's in e-commerce. We might get some into some shops, but it's really cool because the same cocoa nibs that I used in the core are used in a chocolate bar. The
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, the dandelion made for us.
Right.
And then it comes with 2 little packets of instant coffee from Equator Coffees, women-owned company up in San Rafael, California. All of these people are friends of mine because I've been in culinary and pastry for so long. And we put this really nice little exclusive kit together for the holidays. It probably will have some through Valentine's Day, but again, that's only on Reserve Bar. But the cacao is like, talk about an upgrade to your espresso martini or a cafe carajillo, or what I say, make it mocha. Because just add that cacao and liqueur to anything coffee, and it's like, just put it on ice cream. It's freaking delicious.
Well, I look forward to that. Actually, we found an old recipe to a drink called the Revolver, which uses espresso liqueur. And I just thought, that would be a great substitute.
Totally.
The direction of that. Well, we're out of time. I wish you all the luck tomorrow. I look forward to seeing the success of this and the effort you're putting out as a reward in placements and cocktails and people talking about it, because it's really a fascinating story and a brave story, really. I think it takes courage to do this in our age and produce a product like this and say, I stand, this is my thing. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with me about it. It's actually really nice to talk with you.
I appreciate that. We're going to do it again.
That sounds good.
We're going to come back and talk more food and talk more about the success of this product this time.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
All right.